Alright guys, so it's Tamara Hill here. I'm back with Chapter 5. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about Chapter 5. And let's jump in because we have a lot to cover. Alright, so Chapter 5. Chapter 5 is Pursuing Mental Health Treatment in my book, Understanding and Helping Suicidal Adolescents, Therapeutic Strategies for Parents and Teachers from a Trauma Therapist. I am, and then here's the way the back is as well, just to kind of give you a surround view of it. In Chapter 5, I'm going to be talking about mental health treatment and what it is that needs to be pursued. So I like this chapter because it gave me the opportunity to do what I do best, which is to information overload you. I like to give you information that I think is going to be very useful and very helpful to you. So Chapter 5 starts out with talking about the various mental health professionals that you should see. What I like about this chapter is it is cut and dry. So there is no psychoanalyzing. It's all information overload. So I talk about the various credentials that you will run into. So you're going to run into a PCP, a primary care physician, a medical doctor, a psychiatrist, an LPC, an LCSW, a PhD, and a PsyD. These are individuals that you're going to see in clinical settings treating kids who have suicidal thoughts. So, I'm going to let you go by the book, hopefully, and it'll give you information on what each of these credentials mean, and you'll be able to decipher whether or not you want to work with somebody who has that credential. Then I also talk about, I go back to almost what I talked about in Chapter 4, but I give more concrete tips to parents about what not to say to kids who are suicidal, because I think for a lot of parents and a lot of people, having a conversation with a suicidal teen is perplexing because you don't know, what you should or should not say, and you don't know if you're offending them or not offending them. So I give you some examples of what not to say. I could just tell you what to say, but I think my goal is to get you to figure out what you should say on your own. I just want to tell you what you should stay away from, okay? And some of those ideas, I'll give you 3 of them, is very demeaning and hurtful, okay? So I'll give you 3 of the things that I say that you shouldn't say. You have so much to be thankful for. I think that's starting off wrong. Why would you ever consider such a thing? Okay, that's 2. And then the third one is you're unstable right now. Do you think you need help? Right? All of those things can be triggering. It can be emotionally damaging. So I talk about what not to say. And in a small way, I guess I am giving you tips on what you can say instead. But again, the ultimate goal for this part of the chapter, in Chapter 5, is just to prompt you in the right direction. I want you to move away from derogatory or hurtful language that can result in detrimental consequences for your adolescent. So what I do is, after we talk about what you should not say, I give you a practice round. And so here we are with that chapter, and I give you examples of what Stephanie says, and then I give you some spaces to write about what Stephanie says. And my whole idea with this exercise activity is to get you to be mindful of what you're saying. Right? Are you saying something that's derogatory? Are you saying something that's really overwhelming to that adolescent? And if so, how can you change that? So that's the worksheet that's in here. Okay. I also give parents tips on what to say in the first appointment, and I also give you tips on basically questions to ask. So example questions would be, what will individual family therapy be like? How long are sessions, and can I see you more than once a week as the parent? How do you view human suffering? Do I pay for sessions before or after? Will you make contact with my teen's previous provider? And if so, how do I make that happen? What is your experience with culture and ethnicity? I'm sorry, my phone is losing energy. So those are all questions, and there's more, of course, but those are all first appointment questions that I think all parents should ask. What happens if my insurance runs out or stops paying for these sessions? These are all things that you want to know. So it's all in this book right here for you. And then after that, I venture into giving you examples of various levels of care. So actually, I'm going to put this in here. So I'm going to add mental health treatment. And what I'm discussing in this part of the book is various levels of treatment that have been very useful for a lot of the kids that I've seen over the years who struggle with suicidal thoughts. And so I give you another dialogue, but you're not going to do anything with these dialogues but read them. And I talk about a kid named William and his mom Tiffany. He was had so many negative behaviors and was extraordinarily suicidal on a daily basis that he had to go into an RTF. And an RTF is a residential treatment facility. It's a place where kids have to live 24/7 when they can't function in society. So I give you examples of various behaviors that caused him to qualify for residential treatment facility help. So you will see that. And then once I'm done with William, I bring another child into the picture, and I talk about all the behaviors that caused her to qualify for hospitalization, going to the ER. Then I also give you an example of what caused this child to qualify for outpatient treatment, which is a clinic or a private practice. And then we talk about other therapeutic services for suicidal thoughts for teenagers. A 302. What's a 302? What's a 201? A 302 is hospitalization against the child's will or the teen's will. So I talk about that. And then what you should expect as the parent, referrals and follow-up, and community supports. And so the whole idea of this chapter is to focus on what is available to you as the parent. And so I think you will absolutely love this chapter because it's preparing you for learning about behaviors that cause your teen to qualify for a certain level of care. It also provides tips on what you should be talking about during your first appointment. It also provides education on credentials of the professional. It really is an information overload chapter, if you will. It's a chapter that kind of gives you basics, practical information that we sometimes forget on our first appointments or when we're talking to a mental health professional. So I'm going to go ahead and take this time really quickly and jump into Chapter 6. Chapter 6 is safety planning from a trauma-informed perspective, and I will say to you that I absolutely love safety planning with my clients. Safety planning is the idea that we are preparing for a crisis. We are preparing for emotional chaos. And so a safety plan is a variety of skills, tools, techniques that the client and I have decided to choose as helpful. So a safety plan could be anything that describes briefly or in great depth information about coping skills and triggers and ways to reach out for help and who to talk to and what hotline to call. It's really a place where you can get everything that you need. So you will find that in Chapter 6, which is safety planning from a trauma-informed perspective. I do talk a little bit about principles of trauma-informed care that I use in treatment settings with my clients. I talk just a little bit about the self model, which is a sub-category to the sanctuary model of trauma-informed care. I also talk about trauma-focused CBT, and I also provide more dialogues in Chapter 6 to kind of give you an overall idea of what trauma therapy will look like. The dialogue is basically between me and a client named Melanie, and she and I both talk about a traumatic situation that she experienced which led her to be suicidal. And so I give you some information on how I approach her and how I use trauma-informed techniques to work with her. So again, this is an information overload chapter for you, but the whole idea is to give you some push or prompting. You will have a worksheet as well in this chapter to practice. I also delve into talking about development of the safety plan. And so in this chapter, which is chapter 6, safety planning from a trauma-informed perspective, I talk about what's in a safety plan, what's helpful to be in a safety plan, and then I also provide an example of what a safety plan looks like so that you can redesign that safety plan for that teenager that you're working with. And this is a good chapter, I think, too, for teachers, because they can actually just use the example that I provide in the book and just make their own outline. So I prompt you a little bit, and I give you a blank safety plan if you choose to use the book and just write in the book with your teen, or you can, I also give an example, so you can copy or get some ideas, I guess I should say, about the outline of a typical safety plan. Then I jump into talking about crisis planning, which is extraordinarily important. It is a trauma-focused topic, crisis planning, and so I talk about what my idea of crisis planning is, and I always tell my clients that there are 3 kinds of planning for a crisis, and I think that there is psychological preparation, I think there's behavioral, and I think there's emotional preparation. And so you will see once you purchase the book or meet up with me at one of my book signings in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania or Ohio, you will see what I mean by that. So there's psychological, behavioral, and emotional preparation, and you will see what I mean by that. And then I provide information on what debriefing is. I think that's really, really important. So I give you a dialogue again so you can see what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. And then at the end, we put it all together. So I provide an overview of the most important topics, and then I also encourage you to use these worksheets and the information in Chapter 6 to make talking with your teen a whole lot easier. So thanks so much for being with me, guys. I know that was a lot. I encourage you to tell other people about this book if you know a parent or a teacher who might benefit. I encourage you to let them know. I will be talking about the other 2 chapters that's left in the book, and I will also be doing more audio blogs on my website, anchoredinKnowledge.com. But until then, guys, I wish you well, and I will see you in just a little bit. Bye.